but I enjoyed that job a lot. And then when the general, he was in a helicopter accident and hurt his back, and he retired. So I'd met I'd met a few generals that I had a wonderful rapport with, influential generals. So I started writing letters, and I got an assignment to Bitburg, Germany. They've been flying the F-86F, and they were just getting the F-100. So I got myself an assignment to Bitburg, and I really did like that. The flying was terrible because the weather was so terrible. But Bitburg had an east-west runway, and I remember I was there for 9 months and didn't fly a VFR pattern. The weather was so bad. But fortunately, when you're landing to the west, there was a railroad that was exactly lined up with the runway. And if you could get down on that railroad and follow it, when it turned left, you drop the gear and flaps and pull the throttle back and drop the speed brake and push the power up. Because you know the runway is a quarter of a mile or half a mile ahead. And I can't tell you how many times we landed as a result of that radio. We didn't have, again, all we had nav aids was an ADF radio. I mean, you could listen to World Series while you're flying. But I learned to fly in Bitburg, Germany, because the weather was so bad, and it was good. But the camaraderie was wonderful. I mean, Buzz Aldrin was in a sister squadron there at Bitburg, and Dave Scott, who also walked on the moon, he was in one of our squadrons at Schusterberg Hall on the 32nd, and it was a good bunch of guys. I'm still in touch with a bunch of those guys. But after Bitburg, I came back to Luke Air Force Base and taught the gunnery school for 4 years. So, and during that time, the Cuban crisis occurred along that time, and they Air Force sent up all of us instructors down there because we were the most qualified guys in fighter pilots in the Air Force at that time. And my squadron commander was a guy by the name of Bill Wisner. Does that name ring a bell to you? Bill was one of the world's great people. He had something like 16 or 18 kills, not only World War II, but Korean War. And wonderful man. And my ops officer was Simon K. Anderson, captain. He had shot down a MiG. So, you know, I really enjoyed being around these guys. And at Bitburg, we went TDY down to Forrest and Fellbrook at Munich. And, you know, Munich, Forrest and Fellbrook was the headquarters for the Luftwaffe during the war. And all those old German pilots that were retired were hanging around Forrest and Fellbrook. And I remember meeting this German ace. I can't pronounce his name, but he had something like 120 kills. What they counted in those days was engines. If you shot down a B-17, that was 4 kills. But anyway, this guy had 120, or I don't remember, but I was really impressed with this guy, and a bunch of other guys around there. All those guys were aces, and here I am drinking beer with these guys. But Luke was a good assignment for me. I taught instruments in the F-100 and the fighter gunnery school, rockets, and you really get competent. I remember I was always too cocky and when I was flying, and it wasn't good. I remember one time I was towing a dart, and a dart was a big thing. It looked like a dart, and it was hooked by a cable right in the center of that thing. And I flew out on a gunnery range, and all these airplanes trying to shoot the dart, and none of them hit it, so I had to bring it back. But I got a little bit bored coming back, so with that dart about 1,500 feet behind my airplane, I did a big barrel roll. That was a mistake. I didn't know that the dart would turn sideways.
Oh.
And so now I'm pulling that dart sideways, like having 100 speed brakes on that F-100, and the nose just turned absolutely straight down. And I finally decided I'd jettison the dart, and I did that, and I was able to recover. I don't know whether I'd have recovered or not if I'd not jettisoned that dart, but you never stop learning. But that was a good assignment, and I met a lot of really good people. And my wife had asthma, and so an assignment came up in Lubbock, Texas, Reese Air Force Base, to teach pilot training, and Reese was a good weather station for her, so I accepted that job and went over there and started flying a T-38, which T-38 was one of the greatest airplanes I ever flew. I mean, the engine had two engines and afterburners, but you could unscrew the engine on one side, one guy on each end, and lift it off and put it on a dolly. That's how light those things were. And I remember the rule with a student was you take off with both afterburners, hold 1,500 foot per minute climb till you get to 400 knots, hold 400 knots to 0.82 Mach, hold 0.82 Mach to 50,000 feet. So we're talking about 4 minutes or something.
Yeah.
And then with the student, the max gear down speed was 250 knots. So you tell a student to light the afterburners and accelerate to max velocity, and that was about 1.1 Mach at 49,000 feet. We weren't allowed to go to 50 because your blood starts to boil if you. But anyway, we'd go to 49.5, accelerate to supersonic, straight and level. And then I'd tell the student, okay, drop the gear. Well, he wasn't ready to drop the gear at 1.1 Mach, but you're indicating about 180 knots, so why can't you drop the gear? So we did that. And you decelerate subsonic, and he was impressed, and I was always impressed too. So then I'd say, okay, accelerate back to terminal velocity, which was, I think, I recall 1.1 Mach in that airplane. I said, okay, now give me a 0G pushover straight down with afterburners going. And let me tell you, you get to about 35,000 feet, and you fall forward in your harness, and the airplane slows up all the way to the ground with both afterburners going because the air starts getting thick, and that airplane reaches terminal velocity straight and level. It was very, very impressive. The T-38 was a good airplane, and everybody wanted to fly the T-38. So I went from there. The Vietnam War was kicking up pretty good, and I knew that God, I was one of the most qualified fighter pilots in the Air Force at the time. I taught the gunnery school, I taught pilot training, and so I volunteered to go to Vietnam in 1968. And they gave me and I wrote a couple of letters to a general that I knew, and I told him I'd really like to go to Tuiwa. I said, that's the best shot for me. And I got a nice letter back from him, and he said, okay, you got Tuiwa. And I was so thrilled because they had 5 fighter squadrons there. Each fighter squadron had 26 airplanes. Each airplane flew twice a day, and it was a pilot's dream, really. But I'm getting ready to, my bag's packed in Lubbock, Texas. I'm telling my wife goodbye, and Air Force guy came up and handed me a change of orders. I'm not going to Tuiwa anymore. I'm going to Benoit at Saigon to a desk job. Well, my assignment was to land at Clark Field in the Philippines and go through the jungle survival school. And I started thinking about that, and I told myself, I don't remember getting that change of orders. So I landed, after survival school, I landed in a commercial airplane in Saigon, and I was afraid somebody was going to ask me what my name was, but there was a guy flying a Caribou, and he was going to Da Nang or someplace. I said, will you drop me off at Tuiwa? He said, yeah, I'll do that. So I got on that airplane, went to tour right quick, and ignored my change of orders. And I got up there, and I met a full colonel by the name of Butler, James O. Butler, a wonderful man. I'd worked for him at Luke, and I told him, I didn't tell anybody anything, but after a couple of days, he got a phone call. Where's Fenn? I hear Fenn is down at Tuywa. He's supposed to be at Benoit. And so this colonel went to bat for me, and he said, well, Fenn's already checking out in the F-100. He's got a place to live, and he's unpacked and everything. Find somebody else. They said, okay, and I was allowed to stay at Tuywa. Well, but I ducked that bullet pretty good. But I got to Tuywa, and I flew my first mission on the 18th of January, 1968. 12 days later, the Tet Offensive started. I was just checked out. So now they're coming through the concertina wire at Tuywa, and lots of smoke and fire. They're blowing up our airplanes, and I've got a scrapbook full of that stuff going on, and so they gave me the command of the command post. I was a major, and I commanded the command post. And the good thing about that job was that I'm the one that directed each one of the 5 squadrons what to put on the airplanes, their takeoff time, where the forward air controller was, where the tanker was going to be, takeoff and landing, and which meant that I could pick my own flights. So I flew 274 combat missions in the F-100 in Vietnam in about 348 days, and I was shot down twice. The first time was at Ben Tui in the Delta. I was leading a flight of 3 airplanes, and it didn't seem like much of a mission to me. There wasn't much going on. We were shooting up some hooches, and I looked out on my left wing. There were bullet holes in my left wing, and fuel's pouring out. You know, F-100, the wings are full of fuel, JP4. And I said, well, wait a minute, that's not supposed to be like that. And my fuel gauge starts doing this. And the closest base that I could make was Ben Tui. It was a little airplane that had a short runway, and where forward air controllers were flying the little putt-putts out of there, but I couldn't make anything else, so I turned for Ben Tui, and I didn't think I was going to make it, but I knew I didn't want to jump out because the enemy was all around there. I'd get shot in a parachute or whatever. I didn't want to be a prisoner of war, so I told myself I'm going to stay with it as long as I can, and you know, I'm 30 miles out, I'm 20 miles out, you know. When you get down to 1,000 pounds at F-100, you're approaching minimum fuel. You can't make a go-around with 1,000 pounds. So I didn't think I was going to make it. I was reviewing my bailout procedures, but it turned out, I said, I'm not going to jump out till I'm just going to wait and see. And the engine quit about 6 or 7 miles out, ran out of gas, and in the F-100, you have a utility pressure. When the engine quits, you lose your utility hydraulic pressure, which means you don't have a gear down, you don't have a nose wheel steering, and you don't have a couple other things. You don't have brakes. But there's what they call a ram air turbine, a RAT. It's right back here behind on the outside of the airplane. And when the engine quits in the air, the RAT is supposed to open, and that turns a little propeller in there, and you get your utility pressure back. Except it didn't happen. And so there's a handle right here, and I reach for that handle, I pull the handle forward, the RAT handle, and the RAT open. The problem was, with the F-100, when you pull your nose up to land, and your engine has quit, the airflow over the fuselage blanks out, and your ram air turbine quits turning. And that always happens just as your nose begins to land, and you lose your stick freezes. You don't have brakes. You don't have anything. So I knew that I knew that, and I was smart enough to remember that. But so I touched down at about 220 knots because I didn't want to raise my nose, and I had my tail hook down. But unfortunately, I grabbed the tail hook going the wrong way. It was one of these big anchor chains, Navy anchor chain, about this big, and you're supposed to pull it going the other way, and it pulls one link at a time,
Yeah.
and it slows the airplane down. That's a really good way to do that, except that I was going the other way, and I jerked all the links at one time. I touched down at 220 knots, and I tell people I stopped in 220 feet. Jerked part of the tail of that airplane off, and God, I got out of that thing. Hurt my back, even though I was strapped in tight. And I said later, any landing you can walk away from is a good one. I said some landings you can crawl away from, they're pretty good too. So that's what I did, and I got out of that airplane, and fuel dripping all over residual fuel, and I counted, I think, six holes in my wings, and you wouldn't think fuel could get out of a 50 caliber bullet hole as fast as it did, but let me tell you, that really got my attention. So, and then the Gooks blew the airplane up that night, so that took care of that airplane. And but I made an approach and engagement, and as far as I know, that's the only time everybody has made an approach to an engagement and took the chain the wrong way. But there's a guy came from Tuiwa, came down in the F model F-100 and picked me up. We flew a combat mission going back to Tuiwa. It was night and it was raining, and we got shot up again. And I don't remember exactly what happened, but I was in the back seat, and at Tuiwa it was raining pretty hard, and for some reason we had to land on the metal runway. What are they called?
Marston matting.
What?
Marston matting.
Yeah, it was made out of iron.
Yeah.
And when you get it wet, it's slippery. And so we took the barrier again. So I hold the world's record. I tied with another guy. Never having been in the barrier in 4,500 hours in the F-100, and then taking 2 consecutive missions. Shot up both times. So I have distinction of having that in my resume. But the second time I was shot down at Tuiwa was programmed to be my last mission. It was on the 20th of December, 1968, and it was my 273rd mission, my last mission. My Freedom airplane to take me home was 4 days later. So I was leading a flight of 4 airplanes, and I was carrying CBU-34. You may not know what that is, but CBU-34 is a bunch of little bomblets. They look like baseballs, but they have vanes on them, and they drop out of a canister, a tube under both sides of your wing. And when they hit the airstream, they start turning, and they are, once they turn, because they're dangerous, you can't take off with them arms. So the rule was that we were gonna mine the road at Chapon, Laos. We had 2 airplanes shot down the day before on that target, and the Navy had lost some airplanes in recent days. So we knew that there was going to be trouble at Chapon. So we programmed the flight to take off to be on target when the sun was just about to set. And my plan was to come in up sun, hoping to surprise him. I mean, I'm talking about 200 feet and 500 knots to mine this road. And hoping to surprise him on that first one, I had to make 2 passes. And the whole airplane straight and level for 6, 7, 8 seconds. It's forever, And so I think they shot me going in on the first mission, but I don't know. But then I did a whiffle-deal up and came in out of the sun, hoping to blind the guns. And all of a sudden, I lost my canopy. A bullet went right straight in front of my head and shattered the canopy. But big pieces of the plastic were still hanging in the canopy frame. And I looked out and I had bullet holes in my tanks. I'd just come off a tanker. The airplane was full of fuel. And I looked at my dashboard. There's 24 gauges on the dashboard of an F-100. And every one of those things had red lights on them. I mean, I'm exaggerating just a little bit, but I was looking at my oil pressure was going to zero, plenum chamber lights on, utility pressure. Anyway, I knew that airplane wasn't going to take me home.